She spoke to her grandmother in Mandarin and lost her job the very next day. Just one sentence, soft, loving, was enough to end a woman's entire career. And it all started on a Thursday afternoon in the heart of Santa Monica, where plates looked like art pieces and silence was part of the premium service. Maya Thompson stood by the bar, polishing imaginary watermarks off an already gleaming metal tray. 3 years at Juniper and Ash. Not one mistake, never late, never raised her voice. They called her the steel wall, calm, unshakable, precise, untouchable. When her phone buzzed in the pocket of her apron, she simply stepped back, just a few feet behind the server's wall, where the light dimmed and the hum of the espresso machine masked everything. The screen lit up. Popo. Grandma. Calling from the other side of the world, where Taipei's morning sun was beginning to warm the narrow alleyways. The call lasted 30 seconds. Maya spoke Mandarin, quiet, respectful. She asked about her grandmother's medicine, told her to drink more water, promised to call again after her shift. She hung up, stepped back out toward table 6, unaware that from the VIP table across the room, someone had been watching. A cold gaze, suspicious, and in that moment, her future was being rewritten because of a language he didn't understand. Why would a powerful man feel threatened by something he couldn't even comprehend? That question would ignite a storm Maya never saw coming. Maya Thompson was 27, the kind of person you pass by and forget to remember. A black woman with a low bun, crisp uniform, and eyes that were always gentle, but never lowered. To the diners, she was the model server, calm, efficient, invisible unless needed, then gone, before you could say thank you. But that was only half the truth. Maya lived in a 1-bedroom apartment off Pico, where her grandmother's orchids still bloomed, despite getting only a few hours of sunlight through the window each morning. No TV, just an old electric stove, a cracked laptop, and a folder titled for Popo, filled with unfinished poems. After her shift, she often walked home, stopped by the corner store, picked up a small box of strawberries, the kind her grandmother used to love back in Taipei. Fresh, sweet, sliced in halves, and placed in a chipped blue porcelain bowl. A quiet offering after long days. Few knew Maya was fluent in Mandarin. Her grandmother, who raised her after her parents died in a car accident, taught her the language not through textbooks, but through memories, through late-night period dramas, through the sound of folding fans, through warm bowls of rice porridge topped with scallions on cold mornings. To Maya, Mandarin wasn't just a language, it was a lifeline, a living connection to the woman who held her up when the world stayed silent. But at Juniper and Ash, where refinement was defined by a privileged few, Maya never spoke her native tongue. Not because she was ashamed, but because she knew. Some things this society still isn't ready to hear. It was a Thursday afternoon, 2:32 p.m., and Juniper and Ash had begun to settle after the lunch rush. Golden light spilled through the windows, dancing across oakwood tables. Soft music drifted through the room, like everything inside had been tuned into a perfect background melody. Behind the bar, Maya polished a tray that was already spotless. When her phone buzzed, a name flashed across the screen. Popo, Taipei. She rarely called at this hour. Maya knew what that meant. Either the meds had been mixed up again, or her heart was acting irregular. Without hesitation, Maya stepped behind the server's wall, into the narrow space between the wine rack and the espresso machine. She answered. In a voice as soft as steam, she spoke in Mandarin. Have you eaten yet? Don't forget your medicine. I'll call again after work. 30 seconds, that's all. What Maya didn't know was that someone was listening. Charles Remington III, one of the restaurant's most elite VIPs, sat at table 7, a glass of untouched Japanese whiskey before him. He wasn't the curious type. He was the controlling type. And Maya, with her phone pressed to her ear, speaking a language he didn't understand, was a problem. Not because she had done anything wrong, but because he couldn't decode her, and that made him feel threatened. He didn't look at Maya like a guest looks at a server. He looked at her like a glitch in a system he had paid to run smoothly. That stare, brief, cold, and full of disdain, lasted only seconds, but it was long enough to rewrite her future. Because sometimes, discrimination doesn't speak out loud. It only needs a stare and a moment of lost control. The next morning, Maya Thompson's name vanished from the schedule board. No memo, no explanation. But when she assumed it was a technical glitch. The door was slightly ajar. And behind the desk sat Kendra, the floor manager, a thin folder in front of her, eyes avoiding Maya's like she'd rehearsed a polite lie. "Come in, Maya." Kendra's voice was soft, but not warm. Maya sat down, back straight, hands folded in her lap, waiting. Kendra opened the folder. Inside, nothing. No notes, no write-ups, just blank pages. "We need to talk about your call yesterday," she began, her eyes fixed on the folder, as if the cardboard cover might offer a gentler truth. "The call with my grandmother?" Maya asked, steady. Kendra nodded. There was a complaint. A guest said it made them uncomfortable, and from a brand image standpoint, it just didn't align. Maya paused, then asked quietly, "Did I do something wrong?" Kendra bit her lip, shook her head, barely. "Not exactly, but guest perception matters too. We have to maintain consistency." The truth was, Maya wasn't fired for doing anything wrong. She was fired for doing something right, in a language the system didn't know how to control. Kendra represented the kind of leadership Maya had encountered her whole life. People who knew what was right, but chose silence to keep their seat at the table. Women who smiled with their mouths and closed the door with decisions already made. No heartfelt goodbye, no real apology, just a folder of empty paper, as hollow as the courage of the system itself. Maya walked out of the office with a thin envelope and a heavy silence pressed against her chest. No tears, no shouting. She just unfastened her apron, folded it carefully, like she had every day for the past 3 years, and placed it gently on the wooden bench outside the locker room. So, they really did it. Milo's voice was quiet. He stood leaning against the wall, hands tucked into his pockets. Maya nodded slightly. Over a phone call, 30 seconds, a language they didn't understand. "It's not that they didn't understand," Milo said. "It's that they couldn't control it." She smiled faintly, but her eyes were distant, clouded. "I should be angry. I should write something, say something, but all I want is to disappear." "Because you're too tired of having to teach people that you deserve to exist?" Milo asked softly. Maya didn't answer. Her eyes wandered toward the blurred glass door, where the California sun still poured onto the sidewalk like nothing had changed. Beautiful, cold, indifferent. She went home, made a small bowl of congee for herself and Popo, then sat in silence, watching the orchid by the window lean toward the afternoon light. Her laptop was still open, the blog post from last week still blank. The title read, "How do you love a language that makes people uncomfortable?" But the body of the post remained empty. Maya didn't speak, not because she had nothing to say, but because the world had grown so used to ignoring voices like hers. She'd grown used to turning her own volume down. Only Milo still saw her, still heard her, and to him, that silence was a scream, still looking for a way out. Maya didn't speak, at least not yet. She needed time to breathe, but Milo couldn't stay silent. That night, He posted a short message in a private Facebook group for LA service workers. A colleague of mine just got fired for taking a 30-second phone call in her native language. She was talking to her grandmother, in Mandarin, inside an Asian fusion restaurant. A VIP guest didn't like it, and now she's out of a job. Think about that. No names, no addresses, just a single paragraph. But it struck like a match. Screenshots surfaced on Reddit, then Twitter, then TikTok and Instagram, and the comments poured in. This is sick. Since when is your mother tongue a threat? A restaurant with Thai menus and Sichuan chicken is afraid of Mandarin? Really? Who's the VIP? Give us a name. And the internet did what the internet does. Within hours, the sleuths had identified the restaurant, Juniper and Ash. Then came the photo. Charles Remington III, a well-known tech investor. His image began circulating with a caption, "This man got a black woman fired for calling her grandma." The storm erupted. Yelp review bombs, 1 star after 1 star. Instagram flooded with red X emojis. A viral TikTok, 2.3 million views, calling out the hypocrisy of the service industry. They sell culture, but punish the people who live it. Inside the restaurant, chaos. Staff walked out mid-shift. One chef hurled a tray of roasted duck into the trash and left without a word. The anger was no longer quiet. And Maya, though she hadn't spoken a word, was starting to feel it. She wasn't alone. 3 days after her story spread across the internet, Maya opened the Twitter app, typed a few words, then paused. Her hands trembled, not out of fear, but because she knew. Once she hit post, she wrote something simple. Would be the same again. I was fired for speaking to my grandmother in my native language, Mandarin. I wasn't rude. I wasn't late. I wasn't unprofessional. I was just speaking to someone I love, in a language that belongs to me. No hashtags, no outrage, just the truth. And it was the truth that opened the floodgates. Within 12 hours, her tweet had over 60,000 likes and tens of thousands of shares. Stories poured in from everywhere. A Vietnamese girl scolded for speaking to her mother in a hospital. An Indian employee called intimidating for speaking Hindi on the phone. A young Mexican boy told to forget Spanish so he could fit in at school. Asian communities, black and brown voices, human rights groups, everyone shared Maya's post, from New York to Seoul, from Oakland to Toronto. Maya's words reignited a flame in those who had been taught to stay silent. She was no longer just a fired waitress. She had become a symbol for everyone who'd ever been told to tone it down, who'd been asked to just speak English, who'd been labeled other for daring to exist authentically. For the first time in years, Maya felt her voice wasn't being silenced. It rang out, clear, and it was heard. A week after her post went viral, Maya received an email from someone she'd never met. "We'd like to meet to discuss possible resolutions and hear both sides." Signed, J. Roth, legal counsel for Juniper and Ash. The meeting was held in a discreet office near Beverly Hills. No cameras, no reporters, just 3 people in the room. J. Roth, calm voice, expressionless like wax. Kendra, the former manager, avoiding Maya's eyes. And Maya, no blazer, no lipstick, just her truth and her pride. Roth started with the offer. "We're prepared to issue a private apology and 3 months compensation, on the condition that no further public statements are made." Maya stayed silent. Then, looking straight at Kendra, she spoke slowly. "I don't need money to stay silent. I need the truth, spoken, publicly, clearly." The room froze. She continued, "I was fired for speaking my native language, not for misconduct. but because a wealthy man felt threatened by a language he couldn't control. If I stay silent now, this will keep happening. To others. I won't let that happen. Kendra bowed her head. A tiny nod, so small it almost disappeared. You weren't wrong, she whispered. I knew that. I was just afraid. Maya smiled, but not the kind of smile that forgives. It was the smile of someone who's no longer afraid. The next day, Juniper and Ash issued a public statement on every platform. We apologize to Maya Thompson. Her termination was wrong. No one should be punished for speaking the language of their family, their heritage, their heart. And just like that, the story stopped being about Maya alone. It became a warning to every system that hides prejudice behind the veil of brand standards. Maya didn't return to the restaurant industry, not because she couldn't, but because she refused to shrink herself just to fit into a mold someone else designed. A month after the fallout, she used the settlement money, not as compensation, but as a reminder. She had the right to choose. She enrolled in a night cooking class at a local community college. No fancy institute, no gleaming steel kitchens. Just a small room filled with the scent of pepper, garlic, and people who truly listened to one another. By day, Maya wrote, she launched a blog called Kitchen and Identity, a place where she shared her grandmother's recipes, childhood memories, Mandarin phrases, scraps of poetry, and reflections on language, skin, and belonging. Scallion pancakes came with a poem about growing up in Taipei, spicy beef soup with a memory of missing her mother in the rain of Los Angeles. To her surprise, the blog spread quickly. Readers left comments of their own, sent emails, stories of stopping themselves from speaking their mother tongue out of fear, stories of relearning ancestral languages as a way to heal. Maya didn't become a hero. She never tried to. She simply lived truthfully. And in a world that rewards people for pretending to fit, living truthfully is a radical act. Now, when Popo calls, Maya doesn't duck into corners or mute the line. She puts her phone on speaker, speaks Mandarin, loud and proud. Because she knows now, language is where we belong, and no one has the right to make us ashamed of it. Silence doesn't protect you. It just gives other people permission to erase you quietly. Maya used to believe that if she just did her job well, kept her head down, and avoided trouble, she'd be safe. But she wasn't. Her presence, her voice, her culture was already too much for those who wanted the world to spin only around their standards. She didn't speak up out of rage. She didn't speak up to be applauded. She spoke because of one simple truth. If she didn't speak for herself, who would? For Maya, freedom wasn't about loud resistance. It was the quiet morning she peeled ginger, listening to the old song Popo used to hum. It was answering a phone call in Mandarin, anywhere, without lowering her voice. It was showing up online with her real name, her real voice, her real story, knowing full well that some people wouldn't like it. Freedom is presence. It's not apologizing for being different. It's knowing that language isn't a barrier. It's the essence of who we are. Maya never dreamed of being a symbol, but now she understands. When a Black woman stands in the middle of society and speaks her mother tongue without whispering, that is a declaration. And that declaration has traveled farther than she ever imagined. You don't owe your silence to anyone. If you've ever been told to be more polite, lower your voice, or don't make others uncomfortable just by being yourself, this message is for you. Maya didn't shout. She didn't chant slogans. She simply spoke to her grandmother in the language of wonton nights, old movie songs, and love that never needed translation. And even that was seen as crossing a line. If someone feels uncomfortable because of that, that discomfort belongs to them, not to you. Speak. Say it out loud, whether it's in Vietnamese, Mandarin, Spanish, or a voice that doesn't sound like anyone else. Speak in the language your heart understands best, because when you speak, you give others permission to do the same. And when enough of us speak, the truth can't be buried. Share this story if it reminds you of your mom, your grandmother, or someone you love. Someone you once had to whisper to on the phone just to keep the peace. Let this truth spread, not for drama, but as a reminder. Identity isn't something to hide. Language isn't something to apologize for. And your voice can't be taken from you. You are not alone. And your voice, it matters.